Live and ready, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Seldovia Planning Commission, and it is 6:02 p.m. And the clerk could do a roll call.
Commissioner Kroll? You can turn your mic on, her. You can just leave it on. Commissioner Ryan? Here. Thank you. Commissioner Forsberg?
Here.
And Commissioner Sweet?
Here.
All right. We have 4 members present. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. And I'd like to go ahead and call for the approval of the agenda. If somebody could make a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Forsberg. And could I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner. And if the clerk could do a roll call on the approval of the agenda.
Commissioner Kroll?
Yep.
Commissioner Ryan?
Yes.
Commissioner Forsberg?
Yes.
And Commissioner Sweet?
Yes,
We have 4 yeas.
thank you. And then continuing on with the agenda. Let's see, did I do the approval of the minutes? No.
That was for approval of the agenda, so we're on the
Okay,
approval of the
so,
minutes.
Thank you. Go ahead. This is, if I could get it, a motion for the approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Thank you, Commissioner. And if I could get a second.
Second it.
Thank you, Commissioner. And then if the clerk could do a roll call on that, please.
Commissioner Kroll?
Yes.
Commissioner Ryan?
Yes.
Commissioner Forsberg?
Yes.
And Commissioner Sweet?
Yes,
We have 4 yeas.
thank you. And are there any public comments regarding items not on the agenda?
I'm not seeing any, Madam Chair.
And we have no public hearing prior notice today.
Correct.
And we have no consideration for site plans either.
Correct.
And so that takes us to the commission business. And so that's under H, item 1, which is the resolution denying the application to rezone the waterfront resub for lots number 1, lots 2 through 4, block 13 from commercial business district to waterfront commercial residential district. So I wanted to let everyone know that this is basically a procedural type of action. The commission is an advisory body. We provided information to the city council, and we've had discussion about this issue, and they took it up twice and then have returned their decision to us. And so on page 7, you have the resolution. And so what we have to do in terms of our responsibility is we need to receive the denial from the city council, and then we need to provide a resolution to document accepting that, and then provide information back to the applicants for the denial of the request. And then what that does is that enables the city manager then to notify the applicants, and that if they should choose to appeal, that appeal process starts. And so that if it were to be appealed, then it would go back to the city council. in their role as the Board of Adjustment. And then if they wanted to appeal that, then it would go to, I believe it's a Superior Court. So that's what the process is. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I would just point out that accompanying this resolution is a memo from the commission, or sorry, from the council that they sent back. That is a synopsis of council and public comments and points gathered regarding this topic from their January 27th work session regular meeting, as well as from their February 10th meeting. So you'll see that there is, there's a 5-column decision-making tool. Originally it was sent to council as a 3-column, and it got expanded to include the planning commission findings to be able to see them side by side, the city council findings for approval, and the city council findings of denial. You'll see there are points provided in both columns, and that for 4, 5, and 6 of the criteria, those planning commission findings of fact were accepted in both the approvable and denial column. But under number 7, we were directed to put in both columns non-consensus for criteria 7. So there was a vote at that meeting whether they should reconsider, the council should reconsider the zoning amendment in an ordinance form. And it failed. So there was non-consensus in that vote. It was a 2-3, 2 yes, 3 no. And this was what was asked to be sent back to demonstrate that to the planning commission. Thank you.
Thank you. And this kind of also follows up with the making sure that the application got sent over to the council, so it was as complete as it should be, because they had identified one area that wasn't complete as when they received it. And so we wanted to make sure that the applicants had every consideration. And then the other aspect of it was to have the decision-making documented. Our attorney had asked that be done as well. So at this point, we've taken care of the things that we have been advised to do, and we can then step on, then we can take up the resolution. Any other comments from the commissioners on this issue?
Let's see. Yes. How do I raise my hand? This is Allison.
Hi, Allison.
I'd just like to comment that it was a very close split decision, 3-2. There doesn't seem to be really consensus throughout the community on this whole process. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. So in terms of our way forward, I guess I'd like to get a motion to, oh, sorry, I apologize. And then if I could get any public comment on this particular item.
Jack, did you want to speak at all?
I think that we're heading down the wrong road, not rezoning it to commercial residential. It's going to go to appeals, which is going to cost the city money. And I've talked to a number of people, and at this point, I don't see where there's a need for commercial property when there's so much of it set and vacant. And hopefully they can reconsider this down the road, but I can just tell you it's not over with yet. And I think that, it'd be in the best interest of the community if they reconsider rezoning it as commercial residential. It's consistent with the other properties that are down there. And that particular, I don't mean it to set a precedence for the other parcels, but on those 3 lots, I think that it doesn't lend itself to any kind of volume of business. There's only 2 parking places. It's basically on a dead end street. And that's my opinion. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And then just do a motion on the resolution. And any other comments? Okay, so we'll go ahead and close the comments and any other commission discussion? Okay, so we'll go ahead and to the action or disposition. And so in this case, what we will do is we will vote on the resolution, which is on page 7. It goes from page 7 to page 2. Excuse me, page 7. I guess it's page 7 and 8, and it's got page 1 and 2 on it as well. So if I could get a motion to vote on the acceptance of the City of Seldovia Planning Commission Resolution SPC 25-02.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Forsberg. And if I could have a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Kroll. And then I guess, do I still need to do discussion?
There is.
Yeah, I guess at this point, is there any discussion?
We're gonna be voting on accepting the findings. Is that right?
We will vote on approving the resolution. And the findings that would, accepting their decision and the attached findings.
So that would be the resolution on page 7 of the main packet.
And in the main packet, I just wanted to, I've talked with the city clerk, but we're in your packet at the passed and approved. It says city council, but it'll actually say the planning commission.
Yeah, it will say a duly constituted quorum of the Seldovia Planning Commission.
So we will be, the motion is to approve the City of Seldovia Planning Commission Resolution SPC 25-02.
Ready.
And so if you could do the roll call.
Commissioner Kroll,
Negative.
Commissioner Ryan,
No.
Let me just stop and just do a point of order.
Yes.
Okay, look, I guess if we could maybe go to I guess we'll just continue this way and then we can have a discussion afterward.
Accept the findings at the city council. Right?
So in this case, we're voting on the resolution that we're saying that we're accepting the decision of the city council. And remember, we are an advisory body, so we're not making a decision whether to approve or disapprove what they decided. We're just accepting their decision, and because they are the decision makers and they have said that they are not going to rezone, they're not going to approve the rezoning, then we're doing basically a procedural
If I may, it's to close the application out so that the applicants can proceed with an appeal process if they want. So the resolution denies the application, closes the application, which is the proper procedure since it didn't pass the council. And then it gives the applicants their fair right to a hearing if they want to proceed with that.
Could I change my vote to just, I don't want to vote yes or no. I just want to even participate.
What was it gonna ask?
maybe, I guess.
Forgot. Anyway,
So look,
oh, I know what I was gonna ask. So if we vote no, it doesn't stop there, or you just need a vote.
If you guys vote no, then we would need feedback on what your next steps would be because the application stays open. So it leaves the applicants in this la land.
Oh,
The council's not going to pick it back up. So
it gives them
Yeah.
the opportunity to appeal it. If we as a commission don't accept it, then it's like we're tabling it. And
So-
then they're not able to move forward.
so if we
So
vote yes, they can appeal it? Is that what
yes,
you're saying?
yes.
All right.
We're just accepting, remember, we are an advisory body. We from the commission to the city council, we recommended that they do rezone, but they decided not to. But our recommendation, it's moot now because they decided that what they decided, and they are the decision makers, and we're just documenting the return of the application to the commission and then closing it out. And then what happens next is that it starts the timeline for the appeal process. So if the applicants want to, they can appeal. But if we don't do this and close it out, they aren't going to be able to appeal.
Right.
So we're not making a judgment about whether we agree or don't agree with the city council. We're just acknowledging the receipt of the return of the application, and we're closing it out, and we're denying it on the basis of the city council decision. Does that help in terms of?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, a judge probably should figure it out anyway.
So, and so this allows that to go forward. So we want to make sure, like we spent a lot of time on this because we wanted to make sure that the applicants had every opportunity to take it back to the council for the second time and be reconsidered, with everything being given to the city council so they could review it and not have any deficiencies in the information they received. And they did that, but they still decided, because they didn't have consensus, so they decided not to approve it. And so that was what they decided. And so then it's come back to us and we accept it. And then And then if the applicants want to pursue it, then they have the opportunity to do that.
Or we could advise the city council that with this new information that it's gonna cost the city money, they might be able to reconsider their decision.
Yeah, we don't have that information. It's up to the applicant on how they want to proceed it from this point. We have to, it's that fair right to give them that opportunity to see how they want to proceed.
I mean, if they know it's gonna go to appeal, then that's fine. I'm just saying, if they need a chance to do that, that would be up to them.
And I think the city council's aware of the process that because what happens is it goes back, if someone appeals, then it goes back to the city council, but it goes back to them in their role as the Board of Adjustment, which is part of the appeals process. So they will see it again, just in a different role. And then if the applicants aren't satisfied with that, then they can appeal it to the Superior Court. So we were in the process of voting and
Would you like me to continue?
maybe could we just, is it procedurally okay to restart it or not? Okay, so let's just continue with the voting.
Okay, so Commissioner Forsberg
Yes.
and Commissioner Sweet.
Yes.
And then at this point, I guess we can ask if any commissioner would like to change their vote.
Okay. Would anybody like to change their vote? Okay, so if the clerk could
Okay, so at this point, we have 2 yay votes and 2 nay votes, so the motion would fail.
okay. So all right, so I think what we'll do then is we're just going to accept the vote the way it is, and then we'll
need feedback
Yeah.
as staff on how the planning wants to proceed, what their next steps with this application would be. Because the application is still open.
okay. So for the, I guess for, so I guess what this does is it leaves the application open and the applicants cannot appeal the decision. So that's where we are right now. So I guess from the standpoint of the commissioners who voted no, what would your guidance be in terms of next steps? Allison, you're on mute if you're trying to talk.
No, I really don't have any idea. Next steps. I just, I guess I'd really just rather not vote on it, like not have my opinion stated. Like maybe you can change that to 1 no, 2 yeses, and 1 abstain or something like that. I just.
We'll see if a not vote is a no.
Okay, I think it's just right now, I think it's just, we'll just stop here and then we'll get some advice on what might need to be done next. So, okay, thank you. And then we're going to move on to the next topic, which is the Seldovia Municipal Code updates that we've been working on from the Commercial Business District team. And so the information that's available is on page 124 is where the PowerPoint presentation is documented. And then do we have the PowerPoint presentation available to view on the
Yeah, I'm
monitor?
prepared to share it.
Thank you. Okay, so the PowerPoint, so information for you is we'll have this short PowerPoint presentation. It's an updated version of what you've seen before. And then there will be, and then Heidi will provide an overview of the memo about the changes. So so what we were embarking on was the update of the Seldovia Municipal Code. And on page 2, there's are identified the parts of the code that are related to the commercial business district. So we had the part of the code that has to do with defining the purpose of the commercial business district. We have the land use table. So, and the land use table encompasses the commercial business district and also other districts in Seldovia. And then other additional zoning, or excuse me, municipal codes related to the discussion were zoning and that had to do with definitions and the zoning districts. And so as we were having these conversations, we wanted to make sure that these changes would help business owners, the business district, community members, and the community. And we wanted to translate the recommendations from the commercial business district subcommittee into the Seldovia Municipal Code, that it's streamlined and user-friendly. And then this is just part of our continuous improvement process. And we had a number of recommendations, and there were 31 that were consensus recommendations. There were 2 that were non-consensus, and one was a presentation about the boardwalk. The next the next pages here on page 4 and 4, 5, and 6 have to do with the specific recommendations that were provided. And so you can see the green ones are the ones that were implemented, and the yellow ones were not implemented. So that'll just give you an overview of what was actually done. And then there was an additional one that was asked for by the staff to add the maximum 24-inch eaves into the and overhang into the setback. So that was a change that was made. And there were, I guess, in terms of the lodging, there were multiple categories that were updated in the definition. So I think in terms of the non-consensus ones, one of those was the rezoning that we ended up dealing with as a rezoning as opposed to a subcommittee issue. And then there was a short-term accommodations that recommendation that was not done because it was non-consensus. And then we've talked about the boardwalk, and that is on the capital improvement plan. It is a lower priority, but it is something that is within our strategic documents in terms of if that opportunity should arise, that would be considered. And so in May of last year, we agreed to add the review of the recommendations. And so we've been going through that. We also had discussions. So we had the Title 18, and then we had some discussions about Title 5. And once we're done with our review, and we're right at the tail end of it, so I think we should plan to be able to vote on this next in March. But we're just finalizing the recommendations, and getting your input on that. So we've had a number of meetings, and that's just identifying when those meetings occurred. And this is just, yes, Commissioner Forsberg.
I just noticed on the recommendation, that 86, the setback building maximum 24 inches. Would that be minimum, or am I?
You don't want to have more than 24 inches going into the setback.
Oh, okay.
Any other comments or feedback as far as just at a high level here? Okay, so I'll turn it over to Heidi for the review of the memo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So really, this is a review of the draft ordinance, I'm pleased to say. There's still a few outstanding items in the ordinance to address. Just for your information, as we go through this, so that presentation was on page 124. The memo starts on page 134. And I am hoping you guys can go to page 136 where the ordinance begins. And I'll work through the memo with you as we go through the ordinance. There's also a clean draft because we found it beneficial to be able to go through and look at what that ordinance would look like in without all the crossouts and bolds underlined. So if you want to see what it looks like for the most part in a clean form, it's on 161 that starts. And the subcommittee recommendations, if you want a review of that, is back on page 179. So if you want to start with me on page 136, I did have a summary of changes, and they're mostly in order. I realize there's a few that are kind of off as we go through, and actually you can just jump right to 138. You will see the building setback is crossed out. That's because it was combined. We had a definition for building setback and we had a definition for setback. So That didn't make sense. We combined it to one definition, setback building. And then the question I had for the commission is under the definitions for business, we have business, and there was the definition that you guys were working on. And we talked about making sure it was consistent with the Title V definition of business, and we did put the reference back to Title V under commercial business. So I threw it in here just to see if you guys would have a preference to use the actual definition. And that's the second one on page 138 and under business. So there's business means the short one, and then business includes. And this is the definition word from Title V. And then what we ended up doing is we had talked about that, the subcommittee had talked about having a definition for what a business is, and then a definition for business as a land use. And ultimately at the end, going through this ordinance, it didn't necessarily make sense for that definition to be both, because as you see, and I think that was the problem with the top business definition, is it was trying to be to reference those more specific types of business happening in commercial business, whereas we know that, or in that commercial business district, whereas we know that there are more than those types of businesses. So using the Title V definition, it's open to all business types, and then creating a business general land use. And that one is specific to the personal, professional, consumer, commercial, recreation, entertainment, and retail. And then that goes into the land use table, and it covers all of those topics. And you can see those types of businesses are included under business general, as well as on page 139, a definition for business mobile vendor. We did already have this definition in here under mobile vendor, but moving this back up and including that it is also for private approved locations. But if they want to run a business that's a licensed vehicle or cart capable of movement, or a licensed trailer pulled, that is acceptable in the same areas in town as business general is. So, and we'll get to those, what those are. It's permitted pretty much across the board, except for in residential, which was what was already stated as not permitted for business general. The other thing is we took out the business specific office and combined it with business professional office, as well as later on, you'll see a definition for just office. So it was just, that was a lot of the discussion during the commercial business subcommittee, is how to streamline and make it more user friendly and efficient. So this was our attempt to do that. But if you see anything off or that doesn't work, please let me know. And then under the business category, trying to kind of keep things. The other issue I had as I worked on this was that I was literally taking definitions from different areas of the code, or different areas of definitions for like repairs, lodging, storage, and pulling them out and putting them in a separate document because they were too widespread. So that was one thing that I personally implemented in here, and I'm recommending. If you guys don't like it, please provide that feedback, but putting them so that they have a general header over them, like the business, so that when you go and look at business, you see them all together. So business wholesale, that wholesale outlet was just changed to add business in front of it. And then you can see cabin rentals is removed, like we discussed. And if you move through, the ones that aren't in highlight, I won't really touch on unless you guys ask me to, because they have been talked about. We also recommended removing fraternal organization. That's not something that we currently have happening in the community. And that was something that was discussed, of some of these things, if we're not doing them, maybe we don't need to have them. So that was removed. And then you'll see that on page 141, 33, freight storage and staging transportation was crossed out, but that's because that is one of those ones that turned into a category for storage, and I'll show that to you in just a minute. You'll also see that in some of these definitions, like under garage commercial and garage residential, we put references back to other definitions. If it was applicable, or if there would be a chance that it, somebody might read that and think that's their category, but really it's the other category. Garage commercial is C, repair, sales and services and automotive. And then I believe it was taken out of the land use table. And so it's just in there as the one definition, or the one land use, repair, sales and services. Automotive, garage residential is actually an accessory structure. So referring back to garage residential. And then gas storage, gas manufacturer. I did have an opportunity to talk to Chair Sweet a little bit about this. I don't know if she fully got to see it, but going back to that, making sure that the definitions are what we use. We do have code in here. We have definitions that prohibit subsurface and surface extraction of natural resources. And so updating this this definition to focus on the storage aspect, and not necessarily the manufacturing or extraction aspect, because that's not the intent of that use, from my understanding. So instead, it's gas storage. A company or facility is responsible for storing gaseous substance such as natural gas, propane, gasoline, or industrial gases like oxygen and nitrogen in large tanks or underground reservoirs before distribution to consumers or industrial users. So any feedback so far, or I'll just keep going. Okay, if we keep going through, you will see on page 142 highlighted as junkyard, and that's because when we come into the category for, at the last meeting, there was a discussion on establishing an economy of scale for industrial uses. And so that is coming up. And then on page 143, under this blackout, I guess I didn't make it all yellow. I did take the liberty and added lodging before all of the accommodation, including long-term residentials, even though that's kind of a weird one. But in order for everybody to be able to see, if you want to look at what a lodging use is in Seldovia, you can go to one page and see bed and breakfast, hostel, motel, long-term residential rentals, and short-term accommodation together as one. I did also update the language in short-term accommodation from housing to dwelling unit, because that's consistent with our code. We don't really use housing, we use dwelling unit across for what that means. And put in that reference back, if for short-term accommodations with 5 or more rooms or dwelling units, see hotel motel. For owner-occupied short-term accommodations, see bed and breakfast. And for shared, which is how we originally started before we put all the definitions together. But for owner-occupied short-term accommodations, see bed and breakfast. For shared room, dormitory, short-term accommodations, see hostel. So they're all talking to each other, is the hope. If you turn to page 144, you'll see this is where that economy of scale was created, as discussed at the last meeting. And so there's a manufacturing, fabricating, assembly, and just industrial large scale, and more language that was specific to via mass production or manufacturing involving assembly or production lines and specialized machinery. And junkyard, lumberyard, and seafood processing being areas that typically take more space, were put under this category and that would fit under that industrial purpose. But you will see under seafood processing that there is an inclusion of sea manufacturing, fabricating, assembly, small business, small scale custom for small scale processing with a focus on local markets. So that, and then that would fall under that definition. 60, manufacturing, fabricating, assembly, small business, small scale custom, the production of goods in small quantities by a business with a small number of employees, limited resources, and a focus on local markets. Small scale manufacturers often use manual labor and simple machinery to produce a variety of products. So just having that separated out, that yes, that's okay in some districts, whereas maybe a cannery wouldn't be. Vacuum packing, commercial, a small scale commercial fish processing, great. Cannery is a different category. You guys still with me so far? Okay, 146, you'll see I just added in the word or occupied, because that definition, occupancy or occupied, refers directly back to Title 13, and under Title 13, it's occupied. So again, referencing back and having that consistency between our codes. 147, you'll see, as I suggested earlier, that I did remove that automotive definition and instead updated it to be repair, sales, and services automotive. The language stays the same, just changing the title so that when you go and look at repair, sales, and services, you're going to see together automotive, the heavy equipment or small machine as discussed, and then marine equipment. And marine equipment also includes construction and storage, because that's how the definition was before. So just doing a little wordsmith, change the name around. I guess we call that lumping, so that if you look in the clean copy, hopefully that makes sense to everybody. You see it together. 148, setback building, as I discussed, updating those definitions. We had one for setback and the one for setback building. Now we have one that's just setback, comma building, and then including that language for eaves and overhangs shall not exceed 24 inches into the setbacks. And you'll see secondary use. We did the same thing, and that'll come later. Or actually it comes down at the bottom, secondary use and incidental secondary uses with that combination, because we had two definitions for that as well. On page 149, similar to repair, storage, we had a few storage categories. So now we have storage and staging. The definition stayed the same, but the name is updated. Storage and staging, freight and transportation, storage mini facility, and storage warehouse. And it says under storage warehouse, for rental of storage space, see storage facility. Which is at the top of, it's not in yellow because it didn't change. Top of these three definitions. We're almost there. If you go to page 151, you'll see under central business, the purpose statement, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, as well as under permitted uses. There was a suggestion that we put back the language for what permitted use, or for the permitted use being the principal use in the district, and then incidental secondary uses occur after the permitted use. This language here comes directly from previous code that was removed in ordinance 2103. And I want to point out and just quickly go to our laydown, because you'll see that ordinance 2103 was put in the laydown. And that is on page, I thought I'd marked it. I did. 39, where that language comes from. So this was language that was removed through ordinance 2103. And we had discussion on putting those back, as well as the B on page 152, that per chapter 5.35 business license, no person may engage in a business in the city without first obtaining an annual business license. All requirements of chapter 5.35 must be met for the primary permitted use to be considered met for an incidental secondary use. So that was language that we already had. I will point out that the other part of it is that under incidental secondary uses, and we've had this discussion for years and years, that, oh, it's not in code, it's not in urban renewal. Well, here it is. It was under incidental secondary uses that, and those incidental uses shall not exceed 49% of the building. So I will stop there, and for any questions or concerns or changes of putting that language back in, and then we can talk about the purpose statement, and then we'll be wrapping it up once we get some feedback regarding this language, purpose statement, and that business definition, as well as any others you have. So anything for the permitted uses and incidental secondary uses language? No? Okay. So then purpose statement. Chair Sweet brought this to our attention that we had drifted a little bit from the original recommendation from the subcommittee. And in discussion with her today about it, and looking at the rest of the code, we also drifted a little bit away from the rest of the code. So in your laydown on page 7, I pulled out the district purposes for each district. I didn't do airport and public lands, but the rest of the districts are included on here. And you can see that they all have a similar flow of: this district is designed to provide, this district is designed to accommodate, this district is designed to preserve, this district is located and designed to provide, this district is designed to provide, all the way down. And then we have our current commercial business district, which was recently updated with that ordinance 2103. And it says the CB district is established to provide an area for convenient, attractive, and concentrated commercial development. Regulations applied to this zone are designed to encourage a compact group of business of the type which are mutually beneficial and located close enough together to encourage walk-in trade. But also on page 8, you can see from the draft ordinance of the discussion that had the purpose that had morphed through the process is the CB district is established to provide a community center for residents. I won't read the whole thing. And then below that is the recommendation. So kind of a cross between the two. And neither of them are fully consistent with the rest of the purposes, which is fine if that's the desire of the commission and the public. But in this discussion and going through this discovery process, I took a quick stab at if we were going to try to stay true to the commercial business subcommittee definition, but within the consistency of the code. And that's just another consideration at the bottom. This district is designed to be a compact, convenient, and pedestrian-friendly concentrated area for business, including but not limited to shopping, entertainment, office facilities, restaurants, and tourist-oriented facilities and accommodation. District standards are designed to encourage a community center for Seldovia residents and visitors. So would love to have feedback on that. Which one you guys prefer, or if there's a different way you want to workshop it.
Would it be helpful to have those on the screen?
Yes. And then would you rather me continue and then we can come back to it, or do you want us to pause, Madam Chair, and have this discussion if there's any feedback?
I think if we can just go ahead and have the discussion and then if we can come to an agreement, then we can take care of that. And then I just wanted to suspend the rules to allow for public comment in this discussion. So Allison, please go ahead.
Yep, it's Allison. I like the bottom description that starts out with this district was designed, so it kind of flows like the rest of the descriptions. That's the best one.
Thank you. Any other comments?
This is Nicola. Thank you, Heidi, for the definition. I think you did a great job of incorporating what the subcommittee had come together, but incorporating into what works with what you already have existing and making it cohesive. So I think, personal opinion coming from the subcommittee, I think you did a great job of putting in what we liked and making it work for the city.
Thank you so much. And so I'll turn it back over to you to continue.
So we'll update that in the draft going forward. Okay, and then we're gonna go on from commercial business, turning to central business to the land use table. And I just wanted to make sure we were clear about these changes. And let me see, go back to my notes. That starts on page 157. I hope you guys don't mind me taking the time. I just want to be, I'm trying to be as transparent as possible with all of the changes that have come to date. So you will see on 157 that land use table starts. It's alphabetized. The zoning headers that were there have been removed for the most part, and it's more of a cleaner version, because what this ordinance does is it fully repeals the land use code and then reenacts it. However, I did leave in these last minute changes with the highlights and the crossouts just to show you some of the items that we have very recently updated in order to make sure that we call them out, and this memo can go forward to the council when the ordinance does, so that we're very clear and transparent in that process as well. So you see the business general is in there with the not permitted and residential. Fraternal organizations is removed. That freight storage is crossed out because it becomes now under storage and staging with the rest of the state storage. Land uses, garage commercial, as I said before, is removed from the table, but is now incorporated in that repairs, sales, services and sales, automotive. So that's still in here. Gas storage is updated. Junkyard, seafood processing, and lumberyard are removed because they're now under that new category on page 159 of manufacture, fabricating, assembly, industrial, large scale. And then there's some manufacturing, fabricating, assembly, small business, small scale, custom is included. And those should be bold and underlined because we didn't have that category before. So I just took a stab at permitted and not permitted. Would like to have commission feedback on having it not permitted in residential, similar to how business general isn't, and then residential special multi, which there's only the one lot, and that's the Seldovia house, so not permitted there, and then permitted across the board except for on public, which is not permitted. So if you guys have any suggestions or updates or desires to see any changes with that.
I had a question. Public on here, is that city property?
Yes.
Don't you currently have someone on city property that manufactures items on a small scale?
So that could be permitted.
I know it was brought up during the subcommittee meeting that you have current things happening that hadn't been to code in your previous land use, and that you were going to think about adjusting that for this, but you have kiosks on public property and one of those kiosks makes items. I think that would fall under small scale manufacturing. I don't want you to write yourself out of your own business.
Thanks for the feedback. That should also revert back to business general. So making that note in those two categories. You'll see many storage facilities crossed out because then it's moved down to storage mini facility. And then the change there to address the need for storage rentals in the commercial business. And I'm gonna keep saying that until it's passed, but I know it's moving towards central business as secondary. So if you have a primary permitted use and you want to rent storage space, that is permitted.
Real quick,
Yes.
back to on city property, that might be the time to use the administrative permit required, since you don't want anyone thinking that they can have a business on there and it's only through approval of the city.
Good point. Good catch. Thank you. So I'll make that note for both business general and manufacturing small industry. And then offices was removed because it's included under business general. So that wraps up the land use table, unless you guys have any questions or feedback. We are really looking for feedback on the business definition and on those purposes that have been implemented, not the purposes, but the permitted uses and incidental secondary uses. So those are kind of the two big changes, other than everything else we just discussed, that I want to ensure we have time to have feedback on, unless there's anything else you guys would like to go through. And I'll take us back to that business definition. Is on page 138. So if you have a preference on either 14, I would love to have that. And if it makes sense to have that business general for the land use type.
I haven't had a chance to look at that yet, but you said the office now falls under business general.
Mhm.
There are a few changes of what used to be secondarily permitted for offices that are no longer. And it used to have a secondary use in commercial business, but now it would be considered permitted. And we had talked about if I didn't have Herring Bay Lodge, but I wanted to have an office for our commercial fishing business, I could have a private office there, but also have a residence. And we didn't know if we wanted to have private residence as a primary.
So I think that would be different because it would fall under home occupation. So if you look under what the definition for
Well,
office.
Not necessarily, if all of the long-term residentials were occupied in the district
Uh-huh.
and I wanted to have a long-term renter there, but I didn't want to have the permit because there weren't any available. I could
Mhm.
say I have an office for a different business.
Right, but the definition for office is a room or group of rooms used for conducting the affairs of business, retail, profession, service, industry, or government. I can see that, but it's supposed to be a business office.
Okay.
So more,
Mine would be a business office. It'd be for operating
Yeah.
my businesses. I have multiple.
we would need to workshop that a little more.
Something to consider.
Yeah, we can workshop that.
Because I would say the intent is to be as business friendly as possible, right? So we want to encourage, I mean, if somebody has a need and if there's flexibility in how they might use their building, am I going down the right path or?
All right. One of the ideas that came to the subcommittee was that we didn't want people to be able to come in and buy property in the business district to either live in or mainly to live in and then have a business that
Mhm.
they operated, but not really operate their business. And one of those loopholes would be to say, oh, I have my office there and I run these businesses from my office.
So then maybe this does really need to say business professional office under general and then offices stays its own and stays secondary.
Because we did want the city to have their offices their building that they rent out multiple things and
Mhm.
very conducive to business.
Right.
But we wanted to make sure we were protecting ourselves in the district. So someone didn't just claim to have an office and that they were running that, but we wanted also for the city's building, or if someone else wanted to open something similar, to be able to do that. So the two different types of offices.
We can put that back in. Does that work for the commission?
Yeah.
Okay. Can make that adjustment.
But then that will also allow it to have a secondary use in residential, which would no longer be the case if it went under business.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Anything with a conditional use has to go in front of the city.
You guys.
What?
You guys.
Planning Commission.
Oh. And we can make that decision,
Your mic's not on.
and we can make that decision, or is it still advisory?
So in that way, you guys are quasi judicial. You can make decisions on conditional uses and variances. And then that decision stands unless there isn't a quorum, and then that can go to the council. But it does take a majority plus one vote, so it requires a positive, an affirmative vote of 4 in order for those to pass. But yes, that does fall under the Seldovia Planning Commission's purview as a decision that you make. Okay, so with that, does anybody have a preference for the business definition on page 138?
And the option is either 14, the short version of 14 or the longer version of 14.
Right, and the longer version is the one that's directly from Title V. So just in thinking that if we're referring back to Title V as what's required, we should be consistent with our definitions.
So that would be. So is it your recommendation that
Yes,
that the longer one is best because it's consistent with Title V?
correct.
Any other feedback from the commissioners? Is the longer version then, is that a good way to go forward just for consistency's sake? I had a quick question on the business general. If that is going to be specific to land use, would we want to just put something in there that maybe just puts land use in parentheses or not necessarily?
That's not consistent with our
Okay.
other definitions, but it is
Okay.
a practice we could start if you.
I don't know. I guess for the person who's a layperson, it might not necessarily be readily apparent. And so maybe it's just something to just flag for, is that something that we should consider just in the general scheme of things, so that if we're talking about a land use in the definition to flag it as such, or if we're talking about it, if it's, I guess the other, because I know it's land use and the other building use, is that, or am I twisting that up?
Yeah, I'm not.
Land use, so we have like our general definition of business, our business definitions that are broken out, those are not in the land use table, but the business general is.
because it
and so-
covers them.
So it's just,
Looks like Commissioner Ryan has her hand up.
go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, go with the longer definition, and I'm not quite clear on why it differentiates between land use versus activities of the business. I don't know why that's important, yes. Okay.
I had a comment. At the beginning of the chapter 18.70 land use table, could you have somewhere that says, please reference definitions in chapter 18.2? And then at the beginning of chapter 18.2 definitions, you could have something that says, please reference land use table. So instead of adding it to each individual item, like reference land use, it just has it at the beginning. Because if you had any questions about what's in the land use table, all of those definitions are in the definitions.
That makes sense. That way it directs people, to what they need to help them.
Yeah, and then they know where to find it.
So adding language at the beginning of 1820. Under probably definitions general. Somewhere in there, we'll look where it fits best. That's what you're saying, and then at the beginning of the land use table.
Yeah, just so they reference each other.
Okay.
Allison, do you have any more comments?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Was there any other comments about the purpose statements or the permitted and incidental statements and the way the language was added in for referring back to Title 5, starting on page 151?
I had a question. 1852.025 incidental secondary uses, and at the very bottom, it says, and shall not exceed 49% of the building. Is that is an ordinance that's not just coming from the comprehensive plan in 2014?
No, it is from an ordinance and so this is putting that language back, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. But if you'll look in your laydown, you will see on page 39, that language was in there before it was removed through ordinance 2103.
I'm not positive, but I don't know how that would affect, if that would affect any businesses already operating. But if I were to live upstairs at my rental and rent downstairs or vice versa, it would be 50%. Like my business wouldn't qualify because I would be 1% over. They are the same square footage footprint. And I'm not sure if that would impact anyone currently doing business or not, since it wasn't in there before. And when we had talked about it at the subcommittee, you had said that it wasn't in the thing and that it came from the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, and that was what we were under the impression until we went to put these back into the ordinance, and then it was like, oh, there it is. That's where it's been this whole time.
It might switch for it shall not exceed 51% of the building or something like. So your business could be 49%. You know what I mean? I don't know. I know that someone is doing construction on a house currently to be able to do short-term accommodation. And I don't know what that percentage is, but I would hate for them to go through the work of starting a business and not fit that criteria.
Would there be any downside to saying 50%? Would that accommodate, would that take care of your concern, and would it still?
That was my question. What's the significance of the 49.51?
Probably,
Because in her case, she's got half of it and the other
Yeah.
half is, so I'm not sure I understand the difference,
I
percentages.
I think that probably the reason why they used it is because if one thing's the primary and the secondary would be less than, then you're going, well, that way you're just doing it numerically. But if you're doing it 50-50, maybe there wouldn't be any downside to that because you're not really making it any bigger. But if you're splitting something in half, then you're not getting wrapped up into the math of that. So I don't know if that would, if that would just be helpful or if it would not.
It would work for my situation if I had that situation. Like if in the future I sold the building and whoever bought the building wanted to live up in
Mhm.
one of the units, that would be fine. I don't know if it accommodates all of the businesses. So I don't know if the house that is being remodeled, if it's 40% of the building or 30% of the building. I'm not sure what it looks like for other people.
Would be based on square footage.
Is another approach. I don't know if like if conditional use, if there's could it be like with an administrative permit or a conditional use? I don't know if there's another way,
Variance.
if there's another way of doing that. So you're not, because we don't want to spend our time worrying about the math of things, but we want to make sure that it's flexible enough for the business owners and to fit, because the way buildings are, the top floor may be, 50% of the structure and the bottom may be, so whatever it is, but that way you're dealing with the circumstances in a consistent way, because basically you want to have a business occupy about a half of the building and then the other. It's just because stuff like that can just get to be in the weeds, and then it can be frustrating for a person, and it can be frustrating for staff because then you're chasing something and trying to resolve something that's in the itty bitty stuff.
Right, and I think it really, and I appreciate everybody's comments. Because this is really, this is a definitive community decision, a planning commission decision, and then council will discuss it as well. I think because it was in the comprehensive plan and because there has been a community desire to see the majority of the buildings be utilized as business, that was why that language is incorporated, and that originally when those buildings were built, that was the intent of those buildings. And so looking forward at what is the intent of the district to move forward, and yes, wanting to hold true to where we are now with businesses, but also that might be something to look into. So maybe what we could do before the next meeting is we could do a run through and see if it will impact any of the businesses themselves. And then have that broader discussion if we need to. If this is language that we want, that the commission wants to have put back into the code in order to meet that intent of having a business first and not being the primary use or the primary designation of the building. I don't know. We could do that.
That sounds like a good idea. And then I wonder if, because if there are special circumstances, the other thing could be to have a variance because if, let's just say the way the building's built, and if you're wanting to use part of it and it's a defined area, and if you've got another defined area and it's not exactly the percentages that you're dealing with it in a logical fashion and not just on a numeric, just like, well, this is what it says, and so this is what you have to do. So just being able to be flexible enough to be judicious in making your decisions. Go ahead.
Who determines the measurements? Like, if you had a two-story house or building, and upstairs was completely open, and downstairs had all kinds of rooms in it, which cuts down, you know, square footage. Is it measured from the outside?
I would assume so. I mean, that's how we do our building permits. We're not going in and measuring people's offices and bedrooms on the inside of their buildings. So if they're building a building and they're saying the downstairs is business and the upstairs is residential, we're gonna consider those the same, as there's not any overhangs or difference in size. We're not measuring out walls or anything. It's just
Yeah.
the square footage, the overall square footage. of
So
the
that
building.
49% thing is kind of a catch-22 thing, but
Mhm. Yeah, so maybe it does make more sense if it's 50. Or maybe there's language that could be more ambiguous, I don't know, ambiguous, but different, not necessarily building related. I'm not sure.
We could also maybe add in just a line saying, if another percent. I don't know how you would phrase it, but. If another percent of the building. Is required by administrative permit. Like you were saying, a different makeup of the floor plan and, the front 40% is. But they know that it's not reaching that. The percentage that's in the code, then they could go to the office and say, can I have a permit to be able to operate my business in this space? And are you guys okay with that? I don't know. That's giving people an option.
So,
I think in all the things that we've talked about, like the city isn't really in a position to give tax incentives to businesses, but the place that we can be is if we can be a little bit flexible, that helps business owners do what they can do, and we can support them. So this may be an area where we can do that.
I think, and if I remember right, when we were discussing this, that was the difference between when we combined secondary use and incidental secondary use, was that the 49% was in the prior ordinance before it was taken out, related to incidental secondary uses, not secondary uses. And that might be where the confusion is, if that makes sense. So that the incidental secondary use, which would be the additional use, couldn't be more than 49%, but a secondary use was not affected.
Is that in the definitions?
I think so.
So. I think they're pretty similar. Yeah, so secondary use was a use allowed on a lot or parcel of land only if there's an allowed principal use on the property. And incidental secondary use was additional uses of a building of a subordinate or ancillary nature, i.e. second floor apartment, not the main reason for the building. So very similar definitions. And this way here, it covers both secondary uses and incidental secondary uses. That's
And so would that flexibility be workable, do you think?
yeah, I mean, that's the only time we address secondary uses is in the land
Okay.
use table. For things that have to be in commercial business district, and things that have to be. Incidental. To the primary purpose. So. We can workshop that and is there anything else and if the commission would like us to look at before we bring this back again? I have on my notes here that we are going to. Bring back. Oh, where did my notes? I have a list of notes here. No, I. Uh, with that bottom purpose statement. Utilizing the longer business definition, adding language to 1820 definitions. And then at the beginning of land use table regarding land use table definitions. Keeping offices and professional offices separate, bringing back a survey of incidental secondary uses. And it sounds like workshopping that definition a little more. And did I miss anything else? And those smaller administrative permit for the business in general. Business and sorry, manufacturing for public. Anything else? So close.
It's been a long journey. So are we at a point with this agenda item to, so we're good until March 5th, and then then our goal is to have a draft ordinance to approve and then send over to the city council.
And if we can workshop that incidental secondary uses, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I will, I mean, I can commit to helping do whatever we need to get that ready, but is that, I guess my question would be, is that reasonable to expect to be able to have that have that draft ready for, so then we would want to go over these particular items that we've just identified and then confirm that that's fine, and then vote on transmitting the draft ordinance to the city council.
Yeah, if you guys don't have anything else that comes out of it, I think that's
Okay, so,
doable. We can I can be ready by March 5th to present this
okay,
updated ordinance.
okay. So, I mean, I guess that would be our goal. And then I think everybody's done a lot of work on this, and I think being able to wrap it up and then transmit it to the city council, and then the process from there would be that they have to notice it when in their first agenda item, and then a public hearing the following, so that they can have a discussion and vote on it. So it'll take probably into April before they're able to go through their process.
And that's if they don't find anything and refer it back to you guys.
That's true. We could have more gifts. Okay, so do we need to take a few minutes at ease and then reconvene, or are y'all fine for going forward? Opportunity for bio break if needed, but if not, we can continue. Okay, so we'll just, okay, so we'll do that, and then then our next agenda item will be the comprehensive plan audit. Turn it off while we're ready. So so we'll just go ahead and call the meeting back to order, and the city manager will go through the Seldovia Comprehensive Plan implementation recommendations audit.
Thank you, Chair Sweet. So this was a long process that you guys started last year. The commission went through the comprehensive plans implementation recommendations. They were provided to the commission in a table along with information regarding each item, if it had been put in a plan or there had been progress, what progress or no progress. So a brief progress report on each item, and then those items were scored by the planning commission, and there's 42 implementation recommendations in the comprehensive plan. So you'll see on page 11 that implementation recommendations audit results begins. And then
And that's in this, your supplemental
and
packet.
supplemental, yes, thank you. It's a lot of information tonight. So then on the memo itself, it just gives a little background. It talks about how the Seldovia Comprehensive Plan consists of 5 elements, 24 goals, 80 focus areas, and 42 implementation recommendations to help facilitate those goals. Calls out, and this you'll see is memorandum is addressed to the mayor. So this, if approved by the commission tonight, would go to the mayor along with your guys' findings go to the council along with your guys' results. And just to show where the city is in progress with the 2014 comprehensive plan. So calling out the memo. And then if you turn to the next page, page 4, I'd say the first couple pages are numbered. But page 4, it says, of the 42 implementation recommendations, there are 15 action, 10 policy, 11 synergy, and six contingencies. Each goal consists of multiple focus areas and recommendations. For instance, community and health, human resource goals 1, 2, and 4 apply to all actions, policies, synergies, and contingencies. This review began, so it hasn't been a year. The review began in August 2024. You guys, that's pretty good progress to make it through in 6 months-ish. With 4 commissioners, 1 staff member providing the following overall findings for the plan. And so there's a list here that it goes from mid-page 4 through page 5. That just is some of the bigger overall items. The rewrite of the comprehensive plan should include a review of consistency with terms and adjustment as needed. Do we need to create a vision statement? Do we need to integrate additional elements into the plan? So just suggestions that as we move through updating the comprehensive plan, we can keep these in mind and hopefully make sure that that they're being adjusted or implemented as needed. So for instance, goals are a target or objective that someone or an organization is trying to achieve. So reflect community consensus around future priorities with cross-reference to specific recommendations. The formatting is discussed, updating the formatting to be more user-friendly. That the focus areas in here are not clearly defined, what their intent is. Some of the policy synergies and contingency recommendations could be considered action items. And I really think that goes along with that reformatting. I forgot to mention before that should the goals include a bigger emphasis on maintaining existing city roads and infrastructure. According to the Alaska Planning Commission handbook, the comprehensive plan visions, goals, objectives, policies, and implementation strategies provide a framework for decision-making regarding land use, transportation, housing, public facilities, and economic development. So just looking if that needs to be called out more, or if it's covered in the CIP, the CIP, and then including that in there. into the overall plan as well as other existing plans, land use management plan, potentially the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, their sets. And then the Kenai Peninsula Borough is going to be passing soon, potentially a comprehensive safety action plan that could be incorporated. So there are other areas that we can utilize to help make sure that we're moving forward in a cohesive manner with the community's vision and the borough's vision, really, if we look at those items. I can go through all of these items if you want, but I'll stop there and go to page 6. And I did want to just call out here that additionally, because I thought this was a point of interest, but additionally, at their January 27th, 2025 meeting, the Seldovia City Council directed staff to complete a red line review of the 2014 comprehensive plan. The review included a red, green, and yellow scoring system for focus areas and implementation recommendations. Items in red have little or no progress. Items in yellow are in progress or identified in plans as priorities. Items in green have significant progress or are complete. See attached, and that's in this packet. Staff also completed a progress report that provided an overview of the scoring and compared staff scores to the Seldovia Planning Commission scores for the implementation recommendations. Staff and commission scores were mostly consistent with the Seldovia Planning Commission providing a better score regarding synergies and staff. Overall, there were 122 focus areas and implementation recommendations related to the plan's 24 goals. And 62.4% of the plan is in progress or has made significant progress, whereas 45% of the plan has made little to no progress. Staff summary of changes and the commission's overall findings also remain consistent. So I thought that was really interesting to see, and good feedback that those ratings really are consistent. And there's also a table on here provided by Chair Sweet regarding compliance and how the Seldovia complies with the Planning Commission handbook, which is a guide to the Alaska Planning Commissions on how to comply with regulations and good practice. So that's great information and feedback to have. Like I said, there's the results starting on page 11. And then as we called out that red line, just as an additional backup information on page 21, there's a memo regarding that with a summary of changes that were initiated and through that draft red line process. And then the actual plan itself with those red line changes in it. And then you'll see towards the back are the red, green, yellows under the goals and implementation. And then in the very, very back is that progress report with that comparison. The first page, because we didn't have the commission hasn't reviewed the focus areas or audited the focus areas for the comprehensive plan yet, but on the back, very last page 82 is that comparison of the implementation recommendations. So with that, if the planning commission has any recommended changes or anything different for the memo and the results, please provide that feedback. And then if it looks good to go, when you guys are ready, you can just sort of things like that.
But you did a pretty good job as far as I can see.
Yeah, I didn't change those. And the mayor and the council spoke to not wanting to change the formatting at the beginning of the plan. They liked that. but updating the end of the plan to be more user friendly, so.
Allison, do you have any feedback?
No, not really.
Okay,
The sound was kind of coming and going with you guys, but
yeah. I thought I'd just check in with you just to be sure. Thank you. Um, I, I guess, a couple of things. One is one of the things that we discovered was that when the comprehensive plan was done the last time, it was done mostly by an external party, and then it was put together, it was in a book. But the going from the plan to the actions, there's probably some room for improvement. And so one of the things that we might consider doing is having a work plan, an annual work plan on the things that might be focused on for the comprehensive plan. And then if and then just doing a check-in. I don't know, an audit can be a little bit it can be more comprehensive, but if there might be a check-in on the work plan just to make sure, then just kind of like, how have we done in terms of accomplishing what we have set out to do, so that we're keeping the action that we want taken in mind and seeing if it's done. And then I think communication just, so I think those things may help us with communication and just communicating between the planning commission and the city council on the comprehensive plan. Just, I think we've been working on doing that and having periodic updates through the city manager to the city council. But just, I think it's just the opportunities of making sure that the community is involved. If we're writing and updating it, getting the feedback from the community, and then also providing feedback back to the community so that we're really clear about, well, with our plan, this is what we want to do, and this is what our community has told us. And then if there are good ideas, maybe keeping those separate, but if we're able to focus on what we want to accomplish, then we're all kind of clear about that. And then from year to year, and as people come and go, then we have clarity about what we want to accomplish. So I think some of the things that came up indicated that people weren't necessarily aware about what was in the plan or how that might guide us. So I think it's just making it clear about what we want to accomplish. And then I guess the other part that I think is really important is linking all the plans that we have so that they're talking to each other. There's connectedness between them, so that, because since we're such a small community, having that connection and making sure that we're using resources wisely, that we're understanding that piece of how we're doing work in our community, so we are able to accomplish the most we can with the resources that we have. Anybody else have any comments?
That was one of my questions. If there's some way to monitor the performance of the comprehensive plan to make sure that we're reaching our goals in the plan, or if it needs to be revised at some point so that so it's realistic what we can achieve and what we can achieve. And I think, like you say, if we audit the thing in a proper way, we can probably identify the weak points and the strong points and champion the strong points, I guess. So anyway.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda was that everything that we're good at this point.
Are you guys okay with that moving forward to the Seldovia City Council?
Is, so you think we should just go ahead and go forward, transmit the memo to the city council? Allison, is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, so we can go ahead and transmit to that to the city council.
Do you want to do that in a motion or?
We can do that. It's probably proper to do that. So I'm sorry if I could have a motion that to transmit the memo to the city council from the planning commission.
Make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Ginsburg. I have a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So if clerk could take the roll.
Commissioner Kroll,
Yes.
Commissioner Ryan,
Yes.
Commissioner Forsberg, and Commissioner Sweet.
Yes.
4 yeas.
Thank you. And then we have the next is staff reports, upcoming open commission business. And so I guess it's our just our list of things that what we're doing on this item agenda is keeping track of the items that we have open. And so these are abatement, building zone permits on the topographical impacts and Cedar Street extension. So those are open items. And then
So for building permits, we do have 2 open permits right now that will come to the commissioners, hopefully at the end of this week for review and approval. It's going through staff approval right now. In addition, we are in the process of finalizing the checklist for that as well. And hopefully we'll be able to use it on our first building permit closeout soon.
thank you. And then the next one, items not requiring action. Commissioner Ryan and Kroll were reappointed to 3-year terms expiring December 2027. So thank you for your service and thank you for agreeing to continue your service.
Yeah. And it might require a little action in the next meeting to re-sign the oaths for those 2 individuals. I'll do that as well. Or for Commissioner Rice when you return to the state.
And then I think Commissioner Blanchard had submitted her resignation. And so there is a vacancy notice for has been updated for 2 vacancies. So, and one of the things that I've wanted to check in on is if there's an opportunity to reach out into the community to for a younger person. I think the person needs to be 18 years old, but even if somebody's in high school, it might be good to have someone who's younger who could get involved and we could mentor someone if they would be interested, or if somebody's a young adult. I guess one of the things that we may want to consider is just being able to reach out into our community just to get different perspectives, and that might be helpful. Any other comments on that item? And then comments from the public? And then comments from the commission?
Just at the end.
We're getting close. Did you, okay, I had a question for the commission because when the voting on the application, I needed time to kind of just think. And so I'm wondering if the resolution could be worded in such a way as to not infer that the commission is denying that the denial came from the city council and the commission is accepting the package so that it can then go, so that the applicants can appeal. Would that assuage some of the concerns from the commissioners? And I think what I can do is just put that out there for you to think about, and then we can do some more thinking about it overall. But I just wanted to acknowledge that was it's a complex situation, and I'm trying to figure out a way to do that that takes care of that in a procedural type of situation, but also address any concerns that anybody had. So if you want to just put that in your thinking cap and just think and think about it, and then we can I guess revisit it next time. But I just wanted to acknowledge that it is complicated and wanted to work on doing something that would be helpful. So thank you. And
Yeah,
then
that's why I voted yes. Was I think those 3 lots should have the option to appeal. That's why I voted yes. So
Yeah. Yeah, this is Allison. It's just getting late, very late here, and my mind's not really.
okay, yeah. So I recognize that, but I just wanted to I wanted to leave you with that thought, and then if you can think about it and then reflect on it, what might be a good way forward, that's I would like to figure out something that would address whatever concerns you have, but also help
Okay, this is Allison. I think it seems like it's just it's an administrative process, and why are we even doing it? I was feeling really frustrated, and I didn't really want my name associated with that process. It seems like the city council is superior to the planning commission, so why are we agreeing to what the city council said? It's like, why bother with that whole process?
Okay, and thank you for that. And that may be a way to proceed forward. So I don't know. But I welcome any feedback, and then we'll work on getting it resolved. So thank you. And thank you. So our next meeting is on March 5th, 2025. And thank you, everybody, for all your work and your feedback. And so then motion to adjourn.
Randy, I have a question on the vote where the commission voted yes or no on the outcome of the council's decision on the rezoning. Was that a yes or was that a no? I didn't catch.
Go.
So the vote was on closing the application. And so the vote was failed. So the application is not closed. That's what we have to work through as the next steps is how to close the application. The council made their decision. They're not, the planning commission is not deciding whether or not they're approving that. It was just a procedural method that was recommended in speaking with legal to close out the application in an appropriate way so that the applicants we could begin the appeal timeline and the applicants could move forward with their their fair right to, you know, to a hearing if they request that. So we will follow up with legal and see where we need to go from here.
Okay, and then motion to, if I could get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Forsberg. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Prohl. We are adjourned. That was a wimpy one.
That was really,